The IBC provision for existing buildings only permits that fire escapes as a means of egress component on existing buildings and limits the installation of new fire escapes on existing buildings when the code official determines they are necessary based on a substantiation by a registered design profession, or exterior stairway cannot be used due to the lot line limitation, size of the stair, or conditions where the fire escapes could impact the progress on the sidewalk to outside. Additionally, new fire escapes, when allowed by a building official, cannot utilize ladders or windows as a means of egress. Fire escapes are typically prohibited in new construction. So that's kind of wraps everything up for you, right? So can I dig a hole in the ground, putting up a brand new building. Any fire escapes? Never, okay? I have a pre-existing building, a mansion, and guess what? They're gonna make 5 lovely condos on it, all for $1.3 million a piece. And they have one central stair inside that's like a chimney stack in there. And they need to put fire escapes. Can you force them to put fire escapes inside that mansion? I mean, a staircase inside the mansion for every one of those condos? What can they do? What's allowed by law? A fire escape stair that unifies the whole thing, or everyone will have their own fire escape stair. Can they come out the windows? These beautiful mansion windows. No, what's the code says? What do you need? If there's going to be an egress, what do you need? Take it to that window. You got to make it a door. When I step out, now fire escapes are 24 inches wide, 8 and 8 rise and run. That's a fire escape. Because I have no lot lines, I'm limited in size. But if I have a huge backyard, guess what you're going to make me put in? An exterior stair, which people call fire escapes. But now, how many feet wide? Minimum? 3 feet wide. 7-Eleven rise and run. In some cases, they even want you to put a cap over it for the snow. And so now I'm coming out a door, coming out on a 3-foot platform, stepping down a set of stairs. 7-Eleven, can I bring my couch up and down that thing? Sure. Can I bring it up a 24-inch fire escape? Most fire escapes will come out a window. Again, whenever this is where you have the power, usually from the building department. You guys are gonna be writing the violations, but you gotta make sure that what comes back from this is not a fire escape coming out of a window, 24 inches wide, 8 and 8 rise and run all the way to the ground. And if there's a ladder on it, does this say you can put a ladder on it? Ladders are not allowed. There's no more ladders ever. Now, sometimes a ladder and a spiral will be allowed when there's restriction. There's nothing else that will fit in there. It has to be a ladder. Can you throw it once you've met that requirement? Otherwise, can you do ladders ever? Okay. So it's all written right here. And again, IFC 2012. We haven't adopted 2012 here yet, right? It's a great one. Write this one down. OSHA 1910.37. Very important. It says exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, and alterations. Most fires happen when they're drilling holes in walls, when they're ripping things out and pushing things in and throwing nails into the thing. What happens? So wouldn't you expect that if you're going to pull a permit with your building department, that the building department has confirmed that the construction company that's pulling that demo permit, changing, doing that one floor in an existing condo complex, gutting it completely, that they have and there's a fire escape on the backside. What do they want to confirm? That it's safe for the current occupants as well as the workers working on it. OSHA said so. And then also means when the firemen show up, what they need to have. Now, it doesn't mean you shut down the job. If the fire escape is a total wreck, shut the fire escape down. What do you build? Scaffolding. So you don't stop anything. You stop the money train. The fire escapes are going to go back to where they belong, underneath the rug in the back room. Could be on the back of child egress. So don't ever stop the money train. Just know that there's an answer to it. And the answer is, since you're not using this fire escape, just give me a second means of egress. Installed by a licensed and insured scaffolding company. They'll have railings. They'll have 36-inch wide. They won't have construction stairs in there. They'll have full means of egress stairs. Got it? Now, during what this means that we're going to be suggesting to you today with your building department buddies is that during the process of pulling a permit or during the process of closing a permit, some cities will put this OSHA requirement or the closing of the permit to ask for the certificate on the fire escape at the end. So it depends on how you want to do it. We highly recommend for the first 3 to 5 years you put this closure of the permit and the certification of the fire escape on the tail, but then work it to the front to make sure that it's that you don't ruffle too many feathers. Because it's all about, the right thing is in the front, but ruffling of the feathers could happen right off the bat if you do that. You know what I'm saying? In Boston right now, you can't close the permit until you submit the fire escape affidavit. So whether you're changing a light bulb or changing a toilet, all of a sudden when you're closing the permit, the city official will ask the owner and or the vendor for what? A copy of the fire escape affidavit. And everybody goes, what? What's that? So they don't stop the permit closure. You know, you close the permit and you're done. But it issued another violation, and that is you don't have a proper certification. Okay? Now, as I'm going along here, guys, ask questions. So I'm going to try my best to fly through and tell you as much as I can about what's working out there, but you need to also say, hey, I have a question, do you agree or disagree? Again, I know I have a knowledge of code, but I'm limited in my code, but a lot of you guys here already know the code, so if somebody here has a question about the code, hopefully somebody else on the other side of the road can answer that concern for them if there's any stepping on the code of any kind going on, okay? So let's talk about the checklist. What's this mean? You guys don't need to have a fire escape squad going out and walking alleyways and start painting these fire escapes with tags or something like that. You need to have them find you. So you need to create a checklist. So it took 75 years to screw this up. It's going to take 3 to 5 years to put this back together. Okay? So what's that mean in the checklist? Starting with fire prevention. You guys have certain things you do that if you add this to your checklist, it would let people know that you need this in order to complete your process. So one of the biggest things is smoke detector sign off, right? So as soon as somebody gets their smoke detector sign off, they can occupy, right? So when the smoke detector goes off and there's a fire, where do I go? I go to an interior stair or I go to an exterior stair. So that alarm is going to ring, and when you're telling somebody, I did a great job of the installation of this smoke detector, but now I need a copy of your affidavit. You're not ordering an inspection on the fire escape, you're asking for a copy that their fire escape has been certified in a reasonable past time. They say, what's that? Or what are you talking about? Do you stop the smoke detector sign off? No, you got to keep that going. Don't stop the money train. But what did it trigger? Is that smoke detector sign off complete? Or is it incomplete? So you sign it off, let them occupy, but then you say, okay, until further notice, you know, you've got 30 days to give me this. Now, can you always revisit the issue in the future if all of a sudden 45 days go by, 60 days go by, and they haven't given you your certificate? Well, that's a whole different issue. That has nothing to do with the fact that you gave them their smoke detector sign off. Got it? So don't stop the money train. Some of the other things that you can link in. When a sprinkler company, what's the cycle of sprinkler inspection? Every year? 2 years? Every year? Imagine you ask now, this is how you get everybody else to work with you, you ask every sprinkler company to provide with you not only the sprinkler system test, but a copy of the affidavit. And that affidavit is good for 5 years, so once they have the first affidavit, you know what they can keep attaching to that? The same affidavit. But if all of a sudden now the sprinkler system companies need to give you a copy of that, because when the sprinklers go off, where do you run to? All right? I got another idea here. Yearly inspections. For a lot of business, you have that yearly inspection. You're checking the alarm, you're checking the lights, you're checking the battery. What else you ask for when you're leaving the place? So a checklist, just add it to the checklist. Don't go looking for this stuff, just add it to your checklist. And the second means of, I don't know if you have a safe building policy here where you basically confirm the buildings are safe. Do you have a safe building program? What is it? If it's called something different? But basically, what would you ask for that? And they have this, they have their alarms, they have their extinguishers, they have this, they have that, and what do you add to that list now? Even if you can handwrite it in for now. A copy of the affidavit. Building permits. So imagine in the building permit, what do you need to do a building permit? I need my license, I need my insurance, I need a plot plan, I need an engineer's plot sign, I need to make sure my taxes are paid. I got all these things that they won't let me pull a permit until I do all these other things. What do you need to add to it? Which will satisfy OSHA. Second means vigorous affidavit. Now you can either put it at the beginning of the permit process or bring it in at the end to close the permit process, because then it's going to move itself to the beginning. So you're going to work with your building departments. Now also certificates of occupancy. Sometimes on re-rentals or new ownership, what does the building, who does that? Is the building department or fire department that does the new ownership? and the re-rentals.
The building department does it.
What is it?
The building department always does it. That's what it's supposed to be.
Well, this is where you would ask them to basically ask for a copy. Should one not come in, they still do their process, but what do they give you? A name of somebody and an address that does what? Does not have a certificate on file. Housing. In Boston, we have many classes that we've done with housing inspectors. You can't rent a one-family, two-family, or three-family residential style home to HUD or to any Section 8 without having a fire escape affidavit, which before they didn't care. So a lot of times you guys can't even touch those buildings. You're not getting anywhere near the residentials, right? But who does use a lot of the residentials? It's HUD, Section 8 housing. And so how do you get your nose into that one is because they need to have an affidavit to consider it a safe building. So that's where if you have a housing division, this is some of the stuff that they need. Health departments. How many times have health departments shut down an apartment? For mold, cockroaches, you name it. If they get the person out for whatever reason, to get the person back in, what do they need to confirm? That it's a safe building, or it's a safe structure, which means they need to get what? A copy of the affidavit. So here's 4 groups that you can sort of band together, because all the information is going to come back to you. Because they don't want to work it. They'll give you a name, they'll give you a reference, but guess what they don't want? They don't want any more work. All right, now, you guys remember the Station Night Fire? 2003, 100 people died. Right then, Channel 7, Channel 5, there's all these channels. You want to get some stories out there, the power of the pen, very mighty. So Channel 7 wanted to do a story on fire escapes and say, hey, people, even though a bunch of people died in a nightclub fire, in case there's a fire, use your fire escape, because the firemen ain't using them. But and I said, hey, by the way, do you know that 75% of everything I inspected nationwide fails? And of that, 25 to 50% has life safety concerns. She goes, I don't believe you. So I brought her down. Hank Philippi Ryan, she's about 10. She's one of those investigative reporters that's very aggressive. And she said, I don't believe you. So I brought her into downtown Boston, in the theater district. I gave her a 15-minute class on how to inspect fire escape. I mean, obvious stuff. Dangling treads, obvious stuff. And that 1-minute show she wanted to do actually turned into this. That's my evil twin brother.
For months, he examined dozens of them with alarming results. Looking at this today, with this pattern section, in dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings, most is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape. And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually will fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one, missing bolts, twisted metal. Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one, a broken tread. So how dangerous is it that you go inside this one?
This part I think is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or put somebody in the cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. Our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files, but there's no fire escape certification. To see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports. There's no certification. Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules. And as a result, you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not. In Worcester, one we checked was certified. In Somerville, 4 more fire escapes.
They fall through cracks. Yeah.
Not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track. How can you get away with it?
I guess that the shortest answer of all, because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on this.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made. Will you talk to us on camera about this? No, but when we surveyed 24 employees, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a full day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified. The official in charge will not come out to discuss it. 8,000 fire escapes. Again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know, and they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is really, we should.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors.
alert?
Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Phillips.
So immediately right after that, right now, what Boston did, even if it was a knee-jerk reaction, they basically made it so that every permit to close the permit needs to have a fire escape affidavit. So they didn't put it at the beginning, they put it at the end, and just so that they go look for fire escapes, but then the fire escapes find them every day. So they can now say, hey, I'm doing something about it because every day we issue these violations every day. But who rings the bell? It's a building permit rings the bell. Comes in, and they fill it, they check the toilet, they do this, and then to close the permit, what do we ask for? So you gotta get building department involved to at least give you references that says, hey, I closed another permit, guess what he didn't give me? And guess who writes the violation? They do or you do? Because if he's giving you the reference, who's gonna write the violation? Got it? That's how you're gonna have control. Yes, questions?
Why is he closing the permit if he doesn't have the?
Because that's natural, that's what you've been doing for 75 years, so don't change the process. You'll change it later. But in the meantime, all you're doing is saying, you know, because it's not a requirement to have an affidavit given to you. They just put it on the back end to start getting after these fire escapes that nobody's doing. So by just at the end saying, okay, thanks for the permit, by the way, I need a permit, an affidavit for your fire escape. Do you have one? I just changed the toilet. See what I'm saying? It's totally unrelated. They just put it on the end to basically make it a checklist item that says, we are closing all permits regardless of what you did on the building. I just did my roof. I just changed the window, you know, whatever. I don't care, we need an affidavit. So all of a sudden now they close the permit, so the building department's done. You don't want to give them any more work, but now they got a reference for the fire department, which is what? We closed 15 permits, 5 of them didn't have affidavits. That's it. What's those 5 names and what are those 5 addresses? That's all you need, and you'll take it from there. Got it? Because now there's an unsafe structure or a building that doesn't have an affidavit. All right, so you saw what happened. It took a collapse. The fireman didn't die on this one, but the woman did. They fell 4 stories. Got it? And this photograph won a Pulitzer Prize. So if that's what you guys want, here's the thing. We got hand grenades and landmines all over your state. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I had a very similar class like this in Philadelphia, which we're going to talk about today. And 9 months later, guess what happened? It was a collapse of 3 people. 1 died. There's a lawsuit, and guess who they're bringing in as the expert witness? You know what I'm saying? And not because my ambulance was not working that day because I usually chase, but this is what it takes. A lot of times, somebody has to go down. And when it's a fireman, everybody starts freaking out. You know what I'm saying? When it's a fireman and a woman and a baby, it gets even worse. So this is the Philadelphia situation.
It sounded like an incredible explosion when the fire escape of the Philadelphia apartment building suddenly collapsed and injured 3 people.
NBC 10 cameras were there as a friend holds on to one of the victim's hands, who is apparently conscious as the victim is placed into an ambulance by medics.
KYW-TV reports a man who was critically injured and 2 women were rushed to local hospitals.
Police believe the bolts of the fire escape appear to have been rusted and dislodged from the brick wall of the apartment building.
The victims fell more than 30 feet to the ground, and now the incident is under investigation. Worth noting, the complex is more than 100 years old, and even on Philadelphia's historic registry. Local reporters are all pointing out the city's licenses and inspections department hasn't filed any violations in the past when it comes to the old building, so Sunday's collapse came without warning. Neighbors say the three victims, reportedly all in their 20s, had been partying on the fire escape landing before the incident.
That's what they did. They were partying on the fire escape. You know, fire escapes ain't rated for parties. It wasn't the fact that they haven't had a violation in that building for 50 years. Philadelphia and New York City is by far one of the worst locations. When I go there, if I'm seeing an average on the U.S., and just like that story that you saw about the Hank Philippi Ryan, I can take Boston out there and I'll talk to you about this city that I have inspected in Cleveland. It's the same situation, every state. So if I go from Seattle to San Diego, I go from Chicago to Texas, and I go into any major city, and I go to Cleveland, and I have inspected, including, I've inspected the Masonic Lodge. Fire escapes are in a state of collapse. Nothing has passed, anything I've ever inspected in your state has never passed. So you can, it's not just specific to certain areas. Every industrialized city that has, 5 or 10-story buildings, has an infrastructure of some sort, has fire escapes because everybody's stacked. Guess what? The fire escapes are not safe, okay? So on this one, I actually happened to be in Philadelphia examining fire escapes when this came over the news, and I went by the site.
Fire escape engineers inspect the summary video here in Philadelphia. All right. Some of the preliminary information that I'm getting out of this.
So nobody had hired me, I just happened to be there, so I grabbed this information myself while I was there.
Which, this is the back, used to be up against the building. These two brackets here used to be going to that fifth floor up there, where you now see the two blowouts. The blowout on the left and the blowout on the right. And it used to be attached there.
Does that look occupied on that
And
fourth
then
floor?
this staircase, which is here, it went to that platform up there. And that platform up there also had a bracket which is now laying inside the floor below. So they either were going up to that upper floor or they were on this fire escape. And as soon as it let go on this side or up above, which looks like it's all blown out, as soon as it
So
let
the
go
through
there,
bolts were all eaten.
it basically tore away and fell down, or the bracket that holds one of the legs, one of these legs is sitting on a bracket like this, and it's up there. You can see it on the floor below there. See, there's a bracket right there. There's the other piece that's stuck in the wall. There's the hole in the wall used to be. That bracket was there in that corner. And it used to
Cement?
support
You guys see any
the
cement on the
staircase
steel?
that goes to the top corner
Any
there.
cement in the hole?
So that's how this piece got its way down here, and it kind of did this. But the key is, this is what it looked like, that bracket that used to hold one of the corners, and then it would go from here up to a window that, not here, but it's way up there. But so basically when this release or that other piece released, it pulled away and brought this with it, or if this failed first, and then it released the remaining piece, but I believe everybody was either up above on this piece. But see how it ties into the back?
But all that
Single
rust jacket.
bolt with an angle on the back. So this down here represents that there's an angle along the back, an angle along the wall. Okay, and this platform is pretty shoddy, but basically creating a corner.
Months later, the fire escape system looked exactly the
The
same.
building.
And the building was
so
occupied.
should that corner fail, which it did, basically this base is no longer only the staircase that came from the upper platform way up above and fed that upper window. So if they were on the platform itself, 2 or 3 people,
Having a smoke.
look at that whole piece there. That looks like that's not fresh. That looks like it's old. Looks like it's been through rust jacking, ice jacking, and just maybe the cement was getting porous, and it basically pulled away from there.
So, again, it's a little longer tape that I can let you watch, but again, the class is short. But you see, even months later when I went back there, This is only a few days later, but even months later when I went back, nothing was done. They're still investigating, the building was still fully occupied, even though we had fire escapes. And what happened? This is an example of what was happening up there. As water gets behind any fire escape, what does it do to the steel that's inside the building? It corrodes it and eats it, and it becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. What does it do to the outside steel that's actually exposed to the air? Looks perfect. So as soon as you get anything that's compact and stuck inside something, and you're surrounded with wet cement and wet dirt and pigeon poo, and what's it do? And it stays wet all its life. What does it do to that steel embedded in the wall? It corrodes it. Now, don't forget the brick on this is the veneer. That's your final siding. That's not what holds a fire escape in the air. It's what, once you get beyond the brick and into the block wall behind it, that's where you tie in. But between every veneer and every block wall, what do you got? That ½ inch of what? Cavity. And when it starts raining on the roof and it comes down that little ½ inch cavity, what's it do to the metal that's right there behind the veneer brick, but in between the block wall? It does this. Now, would a load test identify this? If you had a building that had all this, it was all bad on the inside, and you load tested, would this make it self-evident? So had they load tested that a week or a month before, would it have collapsed under a load test? Because that's just 3 people. Remember what kills people? Is it parties and 3 people? Or is it, can it hold 30 people and it still won't give way if it's properly maintained? Right? So did the fact that they were on the building, on the fire escape, to collapse that? Or is it impossible to put all its entire occupants on there and make it collapse? It's over-engineered. For firemen, for people, for everybody, and it still has 1,000 pounds more that it can hold beyond what the physical capacity can hold. Got it? So the water that gets behind that you can't see, that comes out, we call them dragon tears. So whenever you're looking at a fire escape, you get all these rusty, long tears, we call them dragon tears, rusty tears. That's telling you what's happening inside. It's all rusty, it can't go anywhere, so where's it go? It goes out and down the side of the building. There's another fire escape collapse, right? This is called live load testing, with real live people, and some of them died. So this is one where people were basically, the owner and his sons fixed the roof themselves, took all the bolts out, and then when they put the fire escape back, they had extra bolts. What do you need them for? Like any great mechanic, what do they always have behind in the box? That were never needed. I don't know why Ford has these extra bolts, they're not really needed. So this was actually during a sale that was selling one of the condos, so a buyer and a real estate agent, a seller and a real estate agent, plus one of the trustees, was on there. This is 3 fire escape systems exactly like that. It collapsed and it fell to the ground. But it wasn't the ground, it actually fell 1 floor below on a roof. They were so lucky nobody died. But everybody had their speed dials calling who? Attorneys who then call who? Fire departments, right? If you survive, Colorado Springs.
Downtown Colorado Springs Wednesday after a man falls to his death.
I was just walking the street, get to the bus stop, and cops were right there told me I couldn't come this way.
Police say the victim and several others were working on the roof of this privately owned building when the man fell.
He may have fallen distance anywhere from 15 to 20 feet is what being investigated right now.
Tragically, the man died on scene. It's believed he fell from a fire escape and not the roof or a window, although what happened is still unknown.
That's what's being investigated right now to determine the actual cause of the accident itself.
Right now, police say the death is not criminal and is being called an industrial accident.
There were several witnesses, individuals who were working with the deceased party, and so we've interviewed them as witnesses in this investigation.
It's really sad. But after his family, I mean, I can only prayers and best wishes to his family.
Others in the area expressing similar concerns and well wishes, visibly distraught by the day's events.
I mean, I can't even imagine it just coming after your job one day. It's really sad.
So what happened there, because I got called by OSHA on that, but here's some of the details. This was a cantilever with a weight cable on the nose going up to a pinwheel and then a weight box somewhere nearby. So these guys were trying to make it to come down so they can use the fire escape to access the roof and work on the roof. Is that a good idea? To work on a non-certified fire escape? And use it as a means of getting up? Well, should they have a crane? Should they have all these things? Because are you supposed to use a fire escape as a work platform? Right? So the guy went out there because he needed to make the cantilever weight come back down. So he went out to the very tip and started jumping up and down. Guess what happened? Nothing happened. So he has two more of his buddies who you saw the photo there. Hey guys, come on out here and help me stand on the edge because this thing won't go down. And when the other two buddies went out, that's when it collapsed. The cable snapped and it caught him underneath here. So what do you think happened? I mean, you can fall 15 feet and get hurt, but what happens when a cable, a whipping cable, a steel whipping cable, about a half-inch thick, let's say, catches you under your neck? So that's what they didn't mention there, but that's what happened. Got it? There's another case here in Iowa. We were brought into Iowa at one of the universities. How many universities in the state of Ohio? So we were brought there because on this building,